Training camp dates are here. The Bills have three real concerns. Heading into 2026, and a familiar wide receiver just hinted. He wants back in Buffalo, Bills Mafia. Get ready because it is about to get wild, Bills Mafia. Listen up. Because the offseason just shifted into an entirely new gear, and there is a whole lot to unpack before these boys lace up their cleats in Rochester next month. We have got the official training camp schedule in hand, and it is unlike anything the Bills have done before under Joe Brady's new regime. We have got three legitimate concerns that surfaced after mandatory minicamp wrapped up. Concerns that every true Bills fan needs to be thinking about before the regular season kicks off. And then we have got a former Bill, no, not that one, put down the Stephon Diggs jersey for a second, dropping some seriously suggestive comments about a potential return to Buffalo that absolutely nobody saw coming. This is the full breakdown. Let's get into it. First things first, training camp is coming and the dates are officially locked in. The Buffalo Bills have released the 2026 training camp schedule, and there is a lot to be excited about, but also a little something to be disappointed about if you are a fan who makes the annual pilgrimage to Rochester to watch these guys work. The Bills will hold 7 open practices at St. John Fisher University, down from the 10 they held there last year, and the annual return of the blue and red scrimmage will take place at the brand new Highmark Stadium. KBW. That is a reduction of 3 practices at the beloved Rochester campus, and for fans who have made it a summer tradition to drive out to Pittsford and watch Josh Allen throw lasers in the morning air, losing 3 reps at Fisher stings a little bit. Camp opens on Wednesday, July 29th, with all 7 practices at St. John Fisher kicking off at 8:30 in the morning. The schedule runs through Friday, August 7th, before the team packs up and heads back to Orchard Park for the return of the blue and red scrimmage on Saturday, August 8th. Odyssey. And here's the part that makes that scrimmage something truly historic. Saturday, August 8th will mark the first major public event with fans inside the new Highmark Stadium. WKBW. Think about that for a second. The very first time Bills fans walk through the gates of their brand new home will be to watch their team practice. That is not just football, that is a moment. That is history. That is something you are going to tell your kids and your grandkids about. You were there when Highmark Stadium officially opened its doors to the Bills faithful, and the setting will be a red and blue scrimmage that doubles as a full community celebration. Now here is the thing you need to know if you want to get to one of those 7 practices in Rochester. Due to limited capacity at St. John Fisher, the Bills are running a public practice lottery system where fans can request a maximum of 4 tickets, and entering the lottery does not guarantee you actually get in. Buffalo rumblings. So if you have been dreaming about standing on the sidelines watching Josh Allen put on a show against air in the summer heat, you better get that lottery entry in before June 26th. Season ticket members get exclusive pre-sale access on June 24th and can request up to 6 tickets per account. Buffalo Bills. If you are a season ticket holder, check your email that morning and move fast, because those tickets are going to disappear in a blink. This year marks the 25th time in 27 seasons that the Bills have held training camp at St. John Fisher University in Pittsford, wham! And while 7 practices feels lighter than what Bills Mafia is used to, the trade-off is that after the blue and red scrimmage, the team will essentially shift their remaining camp work to Orchard Park and the new stadium. Think of it this way. You might be losing some Rochester practices, but you are gaining unprecedented access to a brand new football palace in the process. That is a trade most people are going to be okay with. As for the preseason schedule, the Bills open things up on Saturday, August 15th at 1 in the afternoon against the Carolina Panthers, right there at home in the new Highmark Stadium. Then they hit the road for Week 2 against the Cleveland Browns, and in a piece of logistical news worth noting, the Bills will hold joint practices with the Browns in Cleveland right before that game, which is always a fantastic opportunity to see how the team stacks up against a different roster at a critical point in the preseason evaluation process. And then the preseason wraps up with a home game in Orchard Park against the Pittsburgh Steelers. 3 preseason games, 1 joint practice session, and a training camp schedule that is lean, mean, and clearly built. For a team that wants to get up to game speed fast under a new head coach. Joe Brady is not here to ease into anything. But Bills Mafia, before you get too comfortable with the excitement of training camp dates and a new stadium and all the things that make this offseason feel electric, we have to have an honest conversation. Because mandatory minicamp just wrapped up, and while there is a lot to love about this team, there are also some genuine question marks that need to be addressed before anyone starts ordering Super Bowl parade merchandise. Let's talk about the three biggest concerns hanging over this team heading into training camp. Concern number one is the inside linebacker room, and this one is more complicated than it might appear on the surface. Heading into this offseason, Dorian Williams was the presumptive starter at the second inside linebacker spot opposite Terrell Bernard. Williams stepped into a larger role last season after Matt Milano and Shaq Thompson departed, and while he showed flashes of potential, it was not exactly the kind of performance that locks down a starting role without serious competition. Enter Tyrell Dodson, who has been turning heads throughout the spring in a major way. His athleticism, his coverage ability, his downhill aggression, and his overall physicality have drawn high praise from the Bills' coaching staff, and the buzz around him has been loud enough to raise genuine questions about whether Williams holds onto that starting spot when the pads finally come on in late July. The Bills also used a fourth-round pick in the recent draft on linebacker Caleb Elam, who showed enough in rookie minicamp to suggest he is going to push for real reps sooner rather than later. To make things even more interesting, Dorian Williams was spotted using crutches during mandatory minicamp and was a non-participant, Buffalo Rumblings, which immediately raised the stakes on this entire position group. Head coach Joe Brady said the team is confident Williams will be back on the practice field in time for the start of training camp, Buffalo Rumblings. But the fact that he was unable to participate in the spring's most important on-field sessions is not exactly reassuring. The Bills also have the option of re-entering the market for inside linebacker help, because Matt Milano and Shaq Thompson remain available as free agents, meaning the door is not completely closed on adding proven veteran experience to this room if things do not sort themselves out in camp. But right now, the linebacker competition is messy, and messy competitions are fine when the talent level is high. Let's hope the talent is there when the bullets start flying for real in the regular season. Concern number two is one that directly affects the entire defensive identity of this football team, and it centers on safety Cole Bishop. Now, if you need a quick reminder of why this man matters so much to what the Bills do on the back end of their defense, let's just run through the numbers from last season. 85 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 7 pass breakups, 3 interceptions, and a PFF grade hovering right around 71, with a coverage grade close to 74. That is a legitimate number 2 safety performance from a young player who is only going to keep getting better. He was one of the best stories on this entire defense in 2025, and the kind of player who makes every unit around him better just by being on the field. And he spent all of mandatory minicamp on the sideline. It turns out Bishop had an off-season knee procedure, telling reporters that he got some stuff cleaned up in the knee, which is the kind of understated quote that sounds relatively minor, but still sets off alarm bells for a defense that needs him healthy and ready to go from day one. Clutch points. The procedure was a scope, a minimally invasive surgical process on his left knee, and Bishop confirmed he had started running during minicamp week and fully expects to be healthy for the start of training camp. Yahoo Sports. He even said, and this quote is as reassuring as it is self-aware, if he was not ready for camp, then stuff went bad. He is joking about it, which is generally a good sign. You do not make that joke if you are genuinely scared about your recovery timeline. The reason this matters so much beyond just Bishop himself is that the Bills completely revamped the safety room around him this offseason. C.J. Gardner-Johnson signed a 1-year deal in March, bringing 20 career interceptions and a reputation as one of the most physically intimidating safeties in the league. Geno Stone also signed on, adding another veteran presence with 14 interceptions across 6 NFL seasons. Clutch points. The plan is for Bishop to be the anchor of this rebuilt group, the familiar face who can help the new guys assimilate into Jim Leonhard's defensive system quickly. If Bishop starts training camp on the sideline, the chemistry building process hits a serious roadblock. 6 weeks is enough time to get this right, but the Bills need every single day of those 6 weeks to work in their favor. Concern number 3 is at cornerback, and specifically it is the question of who is going to start opposite Christian Benford on the boundary when the regular season begins. The Bills used a first-round pick in the 2025 draft on Maxwell Harrison, and while Harrison flashed the athletic ability that made teams fall in love with him at the Combine, he only played in about 10 games last season due to injury and never truly seized the starting spot with both hands. Now comes Davis Igbinosun, a second-round pick in this year's draft, who showed up to rookie minicamp and OTAs and immediately started making plays, earning rave reviews from the coaching staff for his physicality and competitiveness. What makes this interesting is that this is not really a bad problem to have. Harrison's coverage grade from last season was right around 68, which sits in the solid average range but is not quite the dominant performance you want from a recent first-round pick. If Igbinosun comes in and wins the job outright through camp, that means the Bills have two capable boundary corners pushing each other to be better, with Benford as the undisputed number one ahead of them. Competition at cornerback is healthy. It is good for the roster, it is good for the defense. But the concern from a draft capital perspective is real, because you want to see a first-round investment lock down a starting job, not still be fighting for it heading into year two. For the Bills, the hope is that both Harrison and Igbinosun develop to the point where they are legitimate NFL starters. Because in a division that includes Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, and whatever weapons New England and Miami are rolling out, you can never have too many quality corners on your roster. The battle for cornerback 2 is one of the most compelling storylines of Bills training camp, and you absolutely want to be watching it from day one on July 29th at St. John Fisher. Now let's get to the part of the show that made some Bills fans do a double take when they first heard it. Because there is a former Buffalo Bill out there who just let it be known in plain language that his time in Western New York holds an incredibly special place in his heart, and that he would absolutely love to come back. And no, this is not Stephon Diggs. We are talking about Brandon Cooks. For those who need a refresher, Cooks was brought in late in the 2025 season as one of those mid-season veteran additions that teams make when the wide receiver depth chart starts looking thin. He did not exactly set the world on fire in terms of volume during the regular season, but when the postseason arrived, he was one of the more reliable options in the passing game. He knows the offense, he knows the system. He has been in the building, and now he is out there telling people publicly that Buffalo is, in his words, one of his favorite places he has played and had an opportunity to play for, and that it is something special out there. That is not just an empty quote. That is a man planting a flag. That is a man letting a franchise know that if you call, I will answer. Does it make sense for the Bills to bring Cooks back? That is where the conversation gets complicated and honestly a little bit fun to think through. On paper, the Bills' wide receiver room is stacked. You have DJ Moore at the top of the depth chart as the legitimate number one, Khalil Shakir, doing what he does in the slot. Josh Palmer hungry for a fully healthy season after the injury issues that have plagued him since arriving in Buffalo. Keon Coleman hearing some genuinely exciting things from the coaching staff about his development and his speed. And Skylar Bell waiting in the wings as the rookie who might just take over the whole conversation the moment he gets healthy and fully integrated into the offense. When you line up those five names, Brandon Cooks does not obviously push his way into the starting lineup. And honestly, for a team building toward a Super Bowl, that is probably the right call in June. You do not want to be dependent on a veteran receiver who is further along in his career when you have the kind of young, dynamic talent already on your roster. But here's the scenario where Cooks makes total sense, and we have seen this movie before with this specific franchise. Mid-season, November, the Bills are rolling, the receiver room is humming, and then somebody goes down with an injury and the depth is suddenly paper thin. Your phone rings, you call Brandon Cooks, and he picks up on the first ring because he already told the world he loves Buffalo. That is not a bad emergency option to have in your back pocket. The key question is whether the Bills would even wait until mid-season, or whether a specific set of circumstances in training camp or the preseason might push them to add him earlier. If Skylar Bell's hamstring is slow to heal, if Keon Coleman's camp hype does not translate into actual production, if Josh Palmer is still shaking off rust, suddenly the equation changes. Suddenly you are looking at your receiver room and thinking, maybe we do need that experienced fifth or sixth option who already knows the playbook and can contribute right away. Brandon Cooks is not going to transform this offense. He is not going to change the trajectory of this season. But as a safety net, as a veteran presence, as a guy who clearly wants to be in that building, there are much worse options to have available. What makes this whole offseason feel so genuinely exciting despite the concerns is the backdrop against which all of it is happening. This is a franchise in the middle of a massive transition. New head coach, new defensive coordinator, new stadium, a rebuilt receiver room built around DJ Moore, a safety room that looks dramatically better than it did 12 months ago, an outside linebacker situation that could be legitimately elite if Bradley Chubb comes in healthy, and TJ Parker continues his development. And at the center of all of it, Josh Allen, who just spent the offseason convincing everyone who will listen that he has not yet hit his ceiling. The return of the blue and red scrimmage on August 8th will be the first major public event inside the new Highmark Stadium, WKBW. And when that moment arrives, when 60-some thousand Bills fans walk into that building for the first time and watch their team work under the lights on a summer night, it is going to be one of the most electric atmospheres in Buffalo sports history. No one in that building is going to be thinking about linebacker competitions or cornerback battles or safety injury timelines. They are going to be cheering, screaming, waving their towels, and believing with every fiber of their being that this is the year the Buffalo Bills finally bring a Lombardi trophy home. That belief is not unfounded. The Football Power Index has the Bills ranked second in the entire NFL heading into 2026. The schedule opens with games that are manageable. The weapons around Josh Allen are better than they have been in years. The defense has been rebuilt with veterans who can make plays and a scheme under Jim Leonhard that promises to be more aggressive and more creative than what Bills fans have seen in recent seasons. Joe Brady has something to prove, and nothing is more dangerous in the NFL than a hungry head coach who has been told he is not good enough and responded by getting the job of his dreams. The Bills have questions. Every team in the league has questions at this point in the calendar. That is what training camp is for. That is what the preseason is for. That is why we are all still watching and talking and debating and breaking this stuff down every single day, even in the middle of June. Because the answers that emerge from Pittsford over those 7 practices at St. John Fisher, and then from the red and blue scrimmage inside that gleaming new stadium in Orchard Park, are going to tell us everything we need to know about whether this team is built to handle the moment when it truly matters. And Bills Mafia, after watching Josh Allen put up historic numbers for years, after watching this franchise come heartbreakingly close to the promised land, time and time again, and after watching a brand new coaching staff arrive in Buffalo with fire in their eyes and a chip on their shoulder the size of Lake Erie, we are choosing to believe. We are choosing to believe that the linebacker room sorts itself out. We are choosing to believe that Cole Bishop's knee procedure is minor and that he shows up on July 29th, ready to terrorize quarterbacks from sideline to sideline. We are choosing to believe that the cornerback competition produces 2 legitimate starters who make Christian Benford's life easier. And we are choosing to believe that July 29th at St. John Fisher University, when those gates open at 8:30 in the morning and the Bills take the practice field for the first time in 2026,